Today, Apple released new MacBook Pros with the newly announced M1 Pro chips, as well as the M1 Max chips. And it goes without saying that this is a big release for Final Cut Pro users. But not only are the new chips in the new 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros, but there was a hint that there's a Final Cut Pro update in the wings with a new feature called object tracking, so I'm looking forward to that. And also particularly important for Final Cut Pro users is the hardware accelerated H.264, the HEVC ProRes and the ProRes RAW features. The new chips give the ability to edit up to 30 streams of 4K video and 7 streams of 8K video in Final Cut Pro. So first, let's have a look at the new Apple Silicon chips. The M1 Pro has up to 32GB of unified memory and a 16-core GPU. And it gives 3 times the bandwidth of an M1 and 70% faster CPU performance than an M1. And it's also got twice the graphics performance. The M1 Max has up to 64GB of unified memory and a 32-core GPU. It's got twice the bandwidth of the M1 Pro, but 6 times the bandwidth of an M1. And it's 4 times faster in the GPU than the M1, along with twice the video performance of the M1. Both of these chips will be offered in the new MacBook Pros starting at US $19.99 for the 14-inch and US $24.99 for the 16-inch. They're available to order now, and they'll start delivery next week. So let's look first at the 14-inch MacBook Pro. The new $19.99 model has an M1 Pro, which is an 8-core CPU with 6 performance cores and 2 efficiency cores with a 14-core GPU. It's configurable to an M1 Max chip with a 10-core CPU and a 32-core GPU. The $24.99 model comes with an M1 Pro 10-core CPU with 8 performance cores and 2 efficiency cores with a 16-core GPU. And it's configurable to an M1 Max chip with 16-core CPU and a 32-core GPU. Since the release of M1 Max last year, memory's been a point of contention. Well, this is no longer an issue with the new chips. The 14-inch MacBook Pros start at a 16GB unified memory and are configurable to 32GB for the M1 Pro, or for the M1 Max up to 64GB. The 16-inch models start at $24.99 with an M1 Pro chip, 10-core CPU, 8 performance cores, and 2 efficiency cores plus a 16-core GPU. It's configurable to an M1 Max with a 10-core CPU and a 32-core GPU. And the good news about ports is that they've increased on all models. They now come with an SD card slot, an HDMI port, a headphone jack, 3 Thunderbolt 4 ports, and the MagSafe port is back. And other things to note is that the touch bar is replaced with physical keys and the screen's just that little bit thinner. The bezels are also reduced, so the extra screen size is achieved without a significant increase in the physical size of the case. And a bit more screen real estate is achieved as the menu bar is now situated around the camera module. There's a longer battery life, 17 hours on the 14-inch and 21 hours on the 16-inch. And also they come with a 50% quick charge in 30 minutes. If you want to check out the full details of the specs, they're currently available on Apple's website. I'm looking forward to news about this update in Final Cut Pro that was hinted at. So don't forget to like, subscribe and press the bell to be notified of new videos about the new Final Cut Pro update.